Hi, I'm attorney Phil Vetro, and this is your Connecticut Field Sobriety Test Guide. You know that between 18 and 35% of completely sober people fail field sobriety tests? Let me say that again. Sober people failing test designed to detect drunk drivers. So if you or someone you know was arrested for DUI in Connecticut after failing one of these tests, I want you to hear this. Failing a field sobriety test is not the same as being guilty, and it is definitely not the end of your case. I'm Phil Vetro, one of the attorneys here at Ruane Attorneys in Connecticut, and today I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know about the sobriety test, what they are, how they work, why they fail sober people all the time, and most importantly, what your options are if you've been charged. So stick around, because the stuff coming up in this video might genuinely surprise you. What are field sobriety tests? So let's start at the beginning. You've been pulled over. Maybe it was a moving violation, maybe you were driving a little erratically, maybe the officer just had a hunch. After the officer talks to you for a minute, they're going to ask you to step out of the car and perform what are called field sobriety tests. These are physical and mental exercises done right there on the side of the road that officers use to decide whether they think you might be impaired. Now, here's something really important that most people don't know. Field sobriety tests are not chemical tests. They don't measure your blood alcohol level. They don't produce a number. They're entirely based on what the officer observes and how the officer interprets what they mean. And that subjectivity, that human judgment call, is exactly where your defense can begin. Why these tests exist in the first place? Well, legally, an officer needs probable cause to arrest you for DUI. They can pull you over on reasonable suspicion, but to actually put you in handcuffs and take you to the station, they need more. Field sobriety tests are designed to build that probable cause. The officer uses your performance combined with other observations like the smell of alcohol or slurred speech to justify making an arrest and requesting a chemical test. So these tests aren't designed to help you. They're designed to build a case against you. That doesn't mean you can't challenge them, and we'll get to that. But it's important to understand what you're dealing with. Not all field sobriety tests are equal. Now here's something that might surprise you. There are actually two categories of field sobriety tests: standardized and non-standardized. And they are not treated the same way legally or scientifically. The standardized tests, the only ones with science behind them. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, has established exactly 3 field sobriety tests that have gone through scientific validation studies. Just 3. Out of everything officers use, only 3 have actually been studied and validated. Those 3 are the horizontal gaze nystagmus test, the walk and turn test, and the one-leg stand test. And even those 3, when administered perfectly under ideal conditions by a properly trained officer, are still wrong between 18 and 35% of the time. We'll come back to those numbers because they matter a lot. The non-standardized test. No science, just guessing. Beyond those 3, officers use all kinds of other tests. Finger to nose, reciting the alphabet backwards, counting fingers, the Romberg balance test. None of those tests have been scientifically validated. There are no established accuracy rates, no standard procedures, no validated scoring criteria, and an experienced DUI defense lawyer can challenge non-standardized test results very effectively, precisely because there is no scientific foundation to stand on. The 3 standardized tests explained. Test 1, horizontal gaze nystagmus, HGN. This is the eye test. The officer holds a pen or flashlight about 12 to 15 inches from your face and moves it slowly from side to side while watching your eyes. they're looking for something called nystagmus, an involuntary jerking of the eye. Alcohol can cause nystagmus, so the idea is that if your eyes are jerking, you might be impaired. The officer checks for 6 clues across both eyes. Whether your eyes follow smoothly, whether it jerks at the far edge, and whether the jerking starts before your eye reaches a 45-degree angle. Now, here's the problem with this test though. Nystagmus is not caused only by alcohol. It can also be caused by fatigue, certain prescription medications, neurological conditions, inner ear problems, and, get this, the flashing lights from the police vehicle itself. So the officer is looking at your eyes on the side of the road with police lights flashing and drawing a conclusion about your sobriety. That's a lot of room for error. And many officers haven't received updated training on this test in years. Test 2, the walk and turn test. This is the one most people picture when they think of a sobriety test. 9 steps, heel to toe in a straight line, turn in a very specific way, 9 steps back. The officer is watching for 8 specific things. Did you lose balance during the instructions? Did you start too early? Did you stop? Did you step off the line? Did you use your arms for balance? Did you turn wrong? Did you take the wrong number of steps? 8 clues. 2 or more clues is a fail under NHTSA guidelines. Now think about where this test is usually administered. On the side of a road, possibly on gravel or grass or uneven pavement, possibly in poor lighting, possibly in the rain or wind, possibly when traffic is passing inches away. And think about who's being asked to do it. Someone who's just been pulled over by the police, who's scared, whose adrenaline is pumping, who may be wearing dress shoes or heels or boots. People with back problems, knee issues, inner ear conditions, or who are older or overweight fail this test regularly. Stone cold sober. Test 3, the one-leg stand test. Stand on one leg, lift the other foot about 6 inches off the ground, and count out loud for 30 seconds. The officer watches for 4 things: swaying, using your arms for balance, hopping, or putting your foot down before time is up. 2 or more of those indicators means a fail. 30 seconds on one leg. Now, for someone who's nervous, older, overweight, has any kind of leg or balance issue, or is just wearing the wrong shoes, that is genuinely difficult, regardless of whether they've had anything to drink. The NHTSA accuracy rate for that test, under ideal conditions with a properly trained officer, is approximately 65%. That means 1 in 3 people could be classified as impaired, whether they are or not. The accuracy numbers you need to hear. Let's put the accuracy numbers on the table because I think they tell a really important story. According to NHTSA's own research, the HCN test is approximately 77% accurate when administered correctly. The walk-in turn is approximately 68% accurate. And the one-leg stand is approximately 65% accurate. When all 3 are used together, the combined battery is said to be about 82% accurate. That means, even in the best case scenario, perfect officer, perfect conditions, perfect administration, these tests are wrong about 1 in 5 times. And those accuracy rates were measured under controlled research conditions, not on a dark highway at 11 p.m. with traffic passing and a nervous driver in dress shoes. In real-world conditions, the error rate is almost certainly higher. This is not me just arguing for my client. This is what the science actually says. And a good defense lawyer knows how to put that science in front of a jury. Non-standardized tests and why they're even weaker. So we talked about the 3 tests that at least have some science behind them. Now, Let's talk about the other stuff officers use. The finger-to-nose test, the alphabet recitation, counting backwards, the finger count test, the Romberg balance test, standing with your feet together, head back, eyes closed for 30 seconds. None of these have been validated by NHTSA. There are no established procedures, no validated scoring criteria, no accuracy studies. Think about the alphabet test for a second. Your performance on that test can be affected by your education level, whether English is your first language, how anxious you are, and countless other factors that have nothing to do with alcohol. When an officer uses these tests against you in court, a good defense lawyer can challenge them hard because there's simply no scientific foundation to support them. Can you refuse field sobriety test? Now, this is one of the questions I get asked most often, and the answer is going to surprise a lot of people. Yes, in Connecticut, field sobriety tests are voluntary. You are not legally required to perform them. Unlike the chemical, breath, or blood test, which is covered by Connecticut's implied consent law and carries real penalties if you refuse, field sobriety tests on the roadside are optional. The officer is not required to tell you that, and most of the time, they won't. But if you know your rights, you know you can politely decline. So should you refuse? This is where it gets a little more nuanced. And honestly, the answer depends on your specific situation. If you refuse, the prosecution has no test results to use against you. But they may argue that your refusal itself shows a consciousness of guilt, that you knew you'd fail. If you take the test and don't do well, the prosecutor has specific evidence to use. But that evidence can be challenged based on improper administration, environmental factors, medical conditions, and more. What I always tell people is this: if you're ever in that situation, the best thing you can do is be polite, be cooperative, and then call a lawyer the moment you can. The decisions made at the scene have a big impact on how the case develops. The real reason sober people fail. So, we've established that sober people fail these tests. Let me walk you through exactly why, because these are the building blocks of a strong defense. Medical conditions. Inner ear problems and vertigo directly affect balance. Neurological conditions like multiple sclerosis, Parkinson, or neuropathy impair coordination. Eye conditions including nystagmus unrelated to alcohol, cataracts, or astigmatism affect the HGN test. Back issues, hip issues, knee injuries, ankle problems, all of these make the walk and turn in one leg stand test genuinely difficult or even impossible. Diabetes can cause symptoms that look like intoxication. Even common things like arthritis significantly impact physical test performance. If you have any medical condition that could explain poor test performance, tell your lawyer immediately. That information is potentially very valuable. Age, weight, and fitness. Research actually shows that people over 65 have particular difficulty with the one-leg stand test, even when completely sober. Balance and flexibility naturally decrease with age. Being overweight makes physical coordination test harder due to the stress on joints and changes to your center of gravity. Being very thin can also create balance challenges. None of these things have anything to do with whether someone has been drinking. Anxiety and nervousness. Now here's one that really resonates with people. Getting pulled over by the police is stressful, even if you've done nothing wrong. The anxiety of a police encounter causes real physical symptoms: shaking, sweating, difficulty concentrating, impaired motor control. Now, these are normal human responses to a frightening situation, and those symptoms can be completely indistinguishable from impairment when an officer is watching you on the side of the road. Environmental conditions: uneven pavement, gravel, wet surface, inclement weather, wind, poor lighting, passing traffic, the slope of a road shoulder. All of these affect your ability to perform balance tests. Tests are almost never administered under the controlled conditions that the NHTSA studies use to establish those accuracy rates. Real-world conditions make these tests even less reliable. Footwear and clothing. I cannot tell you how many times this comes up. High heels make the walk-in turn essentially impossible. Flip-flops, boots, dress shoes with leather soles, shoes with limited ankle support. All of these make balance tests significantly harder. And yet officers rarely, if ever, offer someone the chance to remove problematic footwear before testing. Prescription medications, anxiety medication, pain management, sleep aids, antidepressants, antihistamines, cold medicines, all of these can affect balance and coordination. You can be completely sober from alcohol and still show signs of impairment because of entirely legal medication. Again, tell your lawyer about any medications you were taking at the time of the arrest. This matters. Officer errors that invalidate your results. Now here's something a lot of people don't think about. Field sobriety tests are only as reliable as the officers administering them, and officer training varies a lot. NHTSA has very specific rules. For the 3 standardized tests to produce reliable results, they must be administered according to exact NHTSA protocols. Specific instructions given in a specific way with specific observations made in a specific manner. Even minor deviations from those protocols can invalidate the test results. Common administration errors we look for: giving unclear or incorrect instructions before the test begins, demonstrating the test incorrectly, failing to ask about medical conditions or physical limitations before testing, conducting tests on unsuitable surfaces or in poor conditions, not giving adequate time to complete the test, combining elements of different tests, modifying procedures based on personal preference. The body camera is your friend. Dashboard cameras and body cameras are some of our most powerful tools in DUI defense. Time and again, video shows that a person performs significantly better on a field sobriety test than the officer's written report describes. Video can show improper test administration, unsuitable conditions, an officer who didn't follow the protocol, or a client whose speech and demeanor simply don't match what the report claims. When the video contradicts the police report, that contradiction is powerful reasonable doubt. And reasonable doubt is all we need. How your lawyer challenges these tests. So, now let's talk about what an experienced DUI defense attorney actually does with all of this. Because a failed field sobriety test is not a conviction, not even close. Attacking the administration. We pull every piece of documentation, the police report, any video footage, the officer's notes. We compare everything against NHTSA's exact protocols. And when we find deviations, and we often do, we bring those to court. An improperly administered test loses its scientific foundation entirely. Challenging officer training. Through the discovery process, we can get the officer's training records. When they were certified, whether their certification is current, what their training covered. Officers who haven't maintained current certification or who demonstrate gaps in their knowledge of proper procedures lose credibility as witnesses. And credibility matters enormously at trial. Presenting medical evidence. Medical records, physician statements, testimony from medical professionals. All of these can explain why you performed the way you did, independent of any alcohol consumption. Even something as common as a prior knee injury or a documented inner ear condition can fully explain test failure and create reasonable doubt about impairment. Documenting the testing environment. We document the exact conditions under which the tests were conducted. The surface, the lighting, the weather, the road grade, the traffic. Photographs of the testing location, weather records from that night, testimony about conditions. All of this builds a narrative that explains your performance without pointing to alcohol. Using video evidence, we analyze every second of available footage, dash cam, body cam, and any other angles we can obtain. Video is objective. When it shows something different from what the officer wrote in their report, that's a problem for the prosecution and an opportunity for the defense. Challenging probable cause. Here's something that can be a game changer. If we can show that the field sobriety tests were improperly administered, or that other factors explain your performance, we can challenge the probable cause for the arrest itself. Without probable cause, evidence obtained after the arrest, including chemical test results, may be suppressed. A suppressed chemical test result can completely change the trajectory of a case. You can still win after failing. I want to end on this because it's the thing I most want people to take away from this video. If you failed field sobriety test, your case is not over. Not even close. At Ruane Attorneys, we've successfully defended clients who failed these tests by presenting medical evidence of conditions that affected performance, exposing officer training deficiencies and procedural violations, demonstrating environmental conditions that explain poor test results, and using video evidence to contradict officer testimony. Every case has its own facts, every case has its own circumstances, and every case deserves a thorough review by someone who knows what to look for. The prosecution has to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. A field sobriety test, especially one that was improperly administered, conducted in poor conditions, or taken by someone with a legitimate medical explanation, rarely provides that certainty. So if you or someone you know has been charged with DUI in Connecticut after failing a field sobriety test, give us a call. We've been defending Connecticut residents since 2001. We know how to challenge the evidence, and we offer a free case review so you can understand your options before you make any decisions. The number is on the screen and in the description below. Don't wait on this. Evidence gets lost, video gets deleted, and the timeline matters. I'm Phil Vetro with Ruane Attorneys. Thanks for watching. And if this helped you, share it, because a lot of people out there need to hear this.